Good morning, everyone, from the beautiful San Juan Islands. I am home, and I thought I would stay up here on the hillside instead of going down to the horses because it's a little less windy up here, so maybe you'll be able to hear me better for tea time. I have some really exciting news to share that's exciting for me. I have no idea if it will be exciting for anybody else, but I'm going to share it anyway. So, before I left, I had 77 days at home. And this felt like an extraordinarily long amount of time home for me. Usually I don't get to be home for that long. And during that 77 days, I had this sort of surge of guilt that maybe I had let people down a little bit. Because when I made the movie and I did that first project with Myrna, I really was pushing to prove a point. I wanted to show the world that you could do so much more than you thought you could with less pressure. And I'm not saying no pressure because I think life always includes pressure, but less pressure. And so I set myself the guidelines of no food rewards, no tools, no trapping the horse between me and a fence. She never wore a halter. All of those things so that I would be restricted to just my body language and hers and her freedom to walk away if she didn't like what I had to say. And I learned more in that year than I had in my entire life up to that point with horses. Well worth it. But I really did have something to prove. And so I did use perhaps more pressure than I enjoyed. I got the job done and I stayed within the rules. Even when I broke the rules at some point, like all of you guys have seen the movie, you know she was eating hay the first time I got on her, and then I went, oh wait, that's not how I wanted to do that. So I made sure to choose my riding times when she wasn't eating hay. So there was less of the food piece involved, just to prove that it was possible. So I really felt like I stuck to the letter of the law in that project, and it really helped me learn a lot. I also was still not quite content with the amount of pressure that I used on her and myself to prove what could be done in a year. And so a lot of thought went into my training and what is it that I want? What is it that I want to share with the horse world? What is it that I want to learn myself? What is it that I want to do with horses? And freedom-based training really is everything that I thought it could be and more. But it also, in the true sense of the word, it is freedom. So everyone gets to choose how much pressure they want to use and how much time they can replace pressure with. So I always say you replace pressure with awareness, but to show the horse that you are aware takes time. So we can replace pressure with awareness if we have enough time to show the horse how aware we are in a million brief moments of awareness. And that's what I do, and that's what I teach. But I really felt like, for me, if I get to be free to make my own choices, I want to choose more awareness and even less pressure than I used in the movie. And that's evolved over the years. Now, I have a full teaching schedule. I travel more than half the year. I teach a lot of students. I love the work that I do. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But because time is limited, this luxury of the time to show my horses how aware I am sometimes makes me feel like maybe I'm letting the rest of the world down because I'm not riding them yet. I could. It wouldn't take me very long. I know how to do it. And in fact, my understanding has developed so much, it wouldn't take me nearly as much effort as it did with Myrna because I understand it all better now. But the fact is, I don't want to. The fact is, I want to explore how much horses will voluntarily do for me if I ramp the pressure all the way down. And that's what's really interesting to me. I feel like I proved my point, and I know that I could prove it again if I wanted to, but I don't. Nonetheless, last time I was home for 77 days, I had this little surge of guilt where I felt like I really should be riding these horses. I should prove to the people that, my methods still work. They work with different horses. They work even when I take the pressure down. It's really time that I get to the riding piece. And so because every goal is made up of yields, so the horse needs to yield and feel good about their yields in the forward, the backwards, the left, the right, the up, and the down. And so I decided I was going to do 77 days of yields with all 6 of my horses, just to really get my head in the game. Really think about, what if I was working towards a goal that was a little bit more concrete than I want this to feel good for me and my horses. So I did. But because I have a little bit of wisdom at this point, I set myself several different levels of intensity. So the first level of intensity was I was just going to touch or even approach all the areas that I might yield the horse from. And if they felt good, I was going to pause on that, mark it, make it memorable. If they didn't, I was just going to move on and touch another spot or approach another spot. Just really this was the version of the exercise that was all the way down into showing the horse how aware I was instead of putting pressure on them. That was option A. Option B was I would just sort of stick with each spot a little bit longer to really see if I could get the horse to have a good focus change with each point that I touched. I wasn't asking for the yield, but just, being a little bit more pointed in the work that I did to really see if I could link each place to a good feeling. And then option C was that I would do yields when they felt really appropriate, and I would not when they didn't feel appropriate. And then option D was that I would really set myself up with the 80-20 game and do a yield even if it was hard. And if it was hard, I would make sure that I did whatever repair for the relationship was necessary, but I would make sure and do the yield. So option A, B, C, and D, differing levels of intensity. What I found is I just liked the lightest level of intensity. That's what I wanted to do every day. So I did do 77 days of yields with my horses. Okay, I missed a day here and there, and then I just made sure and did a double. So I did a morning session and evening session the next day. But nonetheless, I did 77 sessions with all 6 horses. And I found each day that I came out, I really wanted to work at the lightest of all possible intensities. I don't have a driving need to prove myself to the world anymore, even if I have moments of guilt that maybe I should. I've done that. And so I followed my heart. And I worked at the lightest levels of intensity. And it felt like I was not doing very much, because that's what it feels like when you really go with what the horse would choose. And then I went away for 6 weeks and I taught through Europe, and it was amazing. And I had such great revelations and such great students and such great learning. And I came back and I thought, okay, maybe I can push a little harder when I get home. And what I found when I walked out into my herd is every single one of the horses had profoundly improved their yields. The lightest touch to the chest was a backup. The lightest touch to the haunches was a hind end yield. Even the yields that were hard when I left, all of a sudden, they weren't hard anymore. I was out to prove something, but it actually was something different than I thought. And that was that less is more sometimes. Sometimes going out and showing up every day with a goal, but choosing less pressure towards that goal, allowing the goal to unfold as it's ready instead of pushing it to unfold on a timeline like I did in that first movie. You can do all of that without tools. You can choose more freedom or you can choose more pressure, and neither one is wrong. I have gotten to a stage in my life where I want to to choose more freedom. And that means I'm going to work with a lot less intensity. And even when I say, okay, come on, Elsa, you know that you could prove to people that you can do more with these horses. Why don't you just get it done? I find my heart's not in it. I go out to the pasture and I want to work at lower intensity. I do think that we'll be riding these horses at some point around my time schedule of traveling and around the availability of weather patterns and all the other things that we work with in life. But I feel good. I feel really, really good. I feel better about my training right now than I think I have in years. And I have a really sweet little story to tell. Ocasio is my horse that generally doesn't love being touched. And he's totally changed. He's totally changed in the last few months. And I wouldn't say that he loves touch as much as everybody else, but he doesn't avoid it the same way he used to. And so I was out in the pasture yesterday working with all my horses, and I have a strict rule that one horse can't steal me from another, because I'm going to end each conversation with each horse on the best feeling. And when one horse steals me from another, it may not be at the best feeling moment. So I have this sort of strict rule that I don't deviate from. But Ocasio discovered that if he just came over within hearing distance and he stared at me for a long time while I was working with another horse, and then he nickered to me, and then he nickered again a couple moments later, that he could help me find a good ending point with the horse I was working with and pull me right back to him. Even though he knew the thing that I was going to do was work on touching all of those yield points in the most gentle, aware possible way that I could, he would call me back, and I'd spend a few minutes with him, and I'd work on those things that I've been working on. And then I'd go to one of the other horses, and again, he would follow, and he'd stand politely at a distance, and he'd watch. And then he would just nicker at me a little bit, every once in a while, help me find a good ending point so I could come back to him again. And I don't think I've ever had a horse so politely and persistently court my attention. And it's amazing. It's the kind of thing that I want. That's the relationship I want with my horses, where even when we're working on something that's not easy for them, they come and ask me if we could maybe practice it again, because sharing time together is worth it to them. It's worth it to them, even if they don't love what we're doing. So that's my sharing this week. Less is more. You might feel like you need to do more to get results sooner, and that's an option. You are free to make that choice. And I will even support you to make that choice, whether it's through my Patreon group or it's through my online courses or my clinics or tea times. I support you in whatever choices you freely make. And your horse will support you in always choosing to do better within those choices, because they have freedom of choice too, if you give it to them. And I am going to stand my ground here, and I'm going to hold on to the thing that I want most. And that is to really stretch the boundaries of how much less I can do and still have it feel like more. So, yep, Elsa, you can tell Luffy. You guys get to choose. You get to choose more freedom or a little more pressure, whatever you need. And then I'll help you guys. I'll help you guys figure it out, whatever works for you. I think I missed some comments here in my story, so I'm going to scroll back. Yay, Margaret, I'm glad you made it. Eva's here. Robin says, this is such a helpful conversation. Thank you. Yeah, it's an exciting one for me to have, because I know I'm often torn between being a little bit more socially acceptable, making my horses do all the things that normal horses can do, even if I do it within the realms of freedom, or just stepping back and saying, what is it that you guys want to offer me? And then we're going to slowly work towards goals. Those human goals that we all have, they're still there. I'm just working towards them at a slower pace. Eva says, this is everything. Yeah. Sarah says, thank you. I needed to hear this today. It was a question I've been thinking about. Yeah. So I am here for you guys. And I do think there are times and places where we need a little bit more pressure because the end goal is important. And that might be for health reasons. It might be for safety reasons. It could be for personal reasons that I don't need to know anything about. There are times and places for more pressure. And I'm going to go ahead and keep supporting people in that. And then on my own personal life, in my own personal way, I'm going to do the thing that I really want to do, which is less pressure. What happens? Let's experiment with it. What happens? So thank you guys. I love you all. I'm glad to hear from you with your progress, Elsa. And hopefully this gives you some inspiration. Above all, I would say, if you guys have a goal, split it into options, A, B, C, and D. Okay, so every day you're going to work on your goal, but you can work on your goal at the lowest level of intensity, or you could work on your goal at the highest level of intensity and have a couple of options in between. That gives you the freedom of choice every single day to work on the goal in the way that feels right to you. And don't worry, your horse will let you know what feels right to them too, if you listen. So that's my closing words for tea time today. I encourage you guys, make options for your exercise, options that decrease in intensity or increase intensity, and then you can choose. All right, you guys, I'm going to leave it there. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me for tea time, and I will look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, if not before.